I always think it's kind of instructive in these to begin at the beginning, and for most people I ask about their early life. I actually want to go a bit further back from you and ask about your parents.
Oh.
And tell us about their background and how they came to Ireland.
Well, I'll go one step further and start with my grandparents. So
Okay.
my grandmother raised 5 kids on her own, and she was a trader on the street, and she was broke rocks for a living as well, and very hardworking woman. And my mum took after her, but realised when she was about 16, 17 that, listen, there's no jobs in Hong Kong, and that because of her family circumstances, she couldn't finish school because there was no money in the family either. So she said to my granny, listen, I'm going to need to go away to get a job. And like, my granny was heartbroken, but like all young people around the world, you go to see where there's opportunity. So for her, she went to Ireland. My dad did the same. They didn't know each other. It's funny. The two kind of people just met here randomly. I always asked them back in the day was, how did you think of Ireland? Like all your people you like. They had friends in Hong Kong that was also emigrating, and they went to the UK. They went to London. A lot of their friends went to Reading. Some of them went to
Because Hong Kong
Edinburgh.
at this point was still a UK protectorate.
Exactly, yeah.
So that would have been the natural place to go.
Yeah, they would have thought, UK would be the best choice. But no, Mum chose Ireland, and so did Dad. I think Mum's case, once upon a time, her brother had come to Ireland, but for her, it just, well, she heard it was a friendly country. She also was of the mindset that if everyone was going to the UK, it'd be better off going to a country that wasn't the UK to get a job. It's like, when I went to Australia, some of my friends went to New Zealand because they thought, well, maybe it'd be easier to find a job there. So they came here, they met in a kitchen in a restaurant off O'Connell Street. I think it was called Fans. I'm not sure. It's now McDonald's anyway. So,
Okay.
But that used to be a Chinese restaurant. She was a dishwasher. He was a kitchen porter. And I love to say they fell madly in love and that was it. But no, it was because they were friends. There was only 10 of them in Dublin at the time, all that spoke Cantonese. And you know how you tend to just kind of go towards what feels like home and the familiarity. So they became friends, and then they got married. So that was them.
What years are we talking about? When did they come here?
They came here in 1970, I think 78, 79. So
There would have been a culture shock coming from Hong Kong to 1978 Dublin.
yeah, definitely. I think especially when you don't speak the language at all. For my mum would have, I guess, slightly more education than my dad. My mum would have done, say, up to what you would call a second year in secondary school. And my dad, however, again, due to family background and finances, like he came from a very, very poor family, he only had primary school background. So he had very basic English, like hello, goodbyes, etc. Whereas my mum had a bit more. So even for her, it was a massive culture shock. You didn't speak the language, you weren't sure how to apply for stuff, you barely know how to get from A to B, and that was hard. It was really hard. But and this is the thing, I don't think I'll ever move to a country where I don't speak the language, because that is the massive barrier for you to be able to integrate. And for them, it was hard for them to integrate, but I guess it was good insofar they found the people really friendly. They worked their asses off. Like mum had 2 jobs and so did dad, and they were able to then rent a house and to then buy a house, and that's where they built. And then they bought a chip van together, very Roddy Doyle, as you could imagine. It was a chip van that we parked in for a house, and I would go there after school each day and sit there and waited until my parents finished work. And then my aunt and uncle came over as well with their kids, and they lived with us. So there was suddenly 9 of us in a 3-bedroom house in Fairhouse for a good while. So
how was that experience?
Cramped.
The truth now, yeah. If people look back and they remember all the good things, I'd say it was got a bit stressful.
Like, listen, you have people right now that's like, I don't know, 7 people in a 1-bedroom. Like, not moving on to the housing crisis, but we have a massive housing crisis in this country. But looking at my own time, it is cramped. It is conditions that, yeah, it's good and familial and warm, but you don't have space. There was like my aunt and uncle in one small bedroom, my mum and dad in another small bed, because like the houses in Fairhouse aren't massive. So they're your like semi-Ds that have 3 smallish bedrooms. So, and then there were 5 kids that were in 2 bunk beds and a mattress on the floor in the last one. So it was a lot of people in a house. But you know, the good thing was my mum could safely go to work and not worry about childcare, which is a worry for many parents nowadays, because she knows my aunt could look after me. So, and then she was then able to save up that money from not having to pay for childcare to then develop another business. So myself, my mum and dad then went and bought a takeaway in Maynooth, and I think for them, the chip van brought a lot of lovely customers, but because it was a van that was parked somewhere that didn't have retail or any community around it, sometimes they got a good bit of abuse and didn't feel like there was any protection or any safety. So and when the van got vandalized, they just went, okay, that's it. We're gonna pack it in, and they moved on and moved and got a takeaway in Maynooth, and then from there. We moved to Selbridge. So when I was about 6 or 7, we moved to Selbridge because it was closer to going to work for them each day.
And up until then, when you were living with your cousins and aunt and uncle, and you were all in this house, I suppose as a second generation, there might have been a danger, and maybe danger is the wrong word, but you know, a risk that you might have had a kind of an insular upbringing, kind of just, you know, almost a kind of that Cantonese upbringing, but in Fairhouse, because you had such a big family unit around you. Like, was there a marked change then when you got to Selbridge and suddenly you were in a different space and you kind of, or maybe that had happened already, I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. It was slightly terrifying moving to Selbridge. There were suddenly people stroking my hair, and I was quite
like out of what? The sense that you were novel?
Yeah, well, in school there was someone stroking my hair saying, "It's so shiny."
I shouldn't laugh. But.
I know, but that's the thing. We were novel, and it's why when my granny, who's illiterate, got someone to write our address down for our parcel in Selbridge, it was Chu, Selbridge, and it got to us. And that was the thing. That was kind of, well, we're novel, and suddenly we're the only family of ethnic minority in the community. So, but you're absolutely right, because we were that family unit in Fairhouse. English wouldn't have been my first language. So even from a language barrier thing issue, again, I spoke Chinese first because all my cousins spoke Chinese and my family spoke Chinese. So when I went to school and to learn English, it was hard for me. And because it was hard for me to express myself in English, it became then a differentiating point for kids, because it was why doesn't that kid speak to us kind of way? What's wrong with her?
Yeah.
And it didn't go down too well in some cases.
Did it make it hard to make friends for you early on?
A little. I think it also wasn't helpful that because of the language, a lot of this comes down to language, but because of the language barrier of my parents sent me to school when I was 3. So because my mum and dad got my date of birth, I shouldn't laugh at this either, but it is funny now that I think about it. Got my date of birth wrong because they couldn't say, couldn't kind of tell the difference in English, the different months at the time. And I ended up going to school at 3. So
3 years
at
old.
3 years old, and my daughter is 3 right now, and I look at her and go, if I sent you to school right now with like 4 or 5-year-olds, you will just be sat on.
4 or 5-year-olds speaking a different language.
Exactly. So, not saying the kids would have bullied her, but like it was more kind of like, no, there's too much of an age difference. So because I started school early and I didn't speak much of the language, it was just, yeah, it was hard going, and that's why every time I go home back to the people of the House of 9 People, it was nice and comforting. But it becomes a vicious circle, because you suddenly then become that kid of dreading to go to school and rather be at home and not kind of integrating as well into the community. But saying that, I have to say, as I grew older, every weekend I would have gone from Selbridge back to Fairhouse because, again, my parents worked in the services industry. So on weekends they were busy, so they would send me back to my cousins and and aunt and uncle in Fairhouse. And I made lots of friends there through my later childhood and teenage years, when I had the confidence to hold my own, when I could speak the language well. Like the community in Fairhouse are great. Everyone knows each other.
Was there a point growing up when that happened that you can remember that you kind of gained that confidence to kind of go out and make friends and not think, oh God, I hope the language doesn't trip me up here?
Oh yeah, it would have been at least, I think, after kind of third or fourth class. So by about kind of 7 or 8, which is hard going. But then most kids find that hard to make friends when they feel slightly different, and this was always the problem. And
I think you think fourth class, you're 7 or 8. Most people are 9 or 10, but of course you were 7 or 8.
I know. Sorry. When I went into UCD, everyone gawked at me because even with repeating my leaving cert, I was 16 going on 17. So I was really young for going in, and there was this big stamp on my student card going under 18. So for bars and stuff. But that's the thing. You gain confidence as you go along. But when you do look different, you have that feeling of constantly that people aren't judging you, but that you don't quite fit in. And this is the thing I've noticed even with second or third, like I'm second generation coming from a migrant family. I look at third generation now, my cousin's generation, and they, like, even though they were born here, raised here, their parents possibly would have been born here, raised here, they still kind of go, oh, my skin color is the thing that makes me different. So
if you're just tuning in, Hazel Chu is my guest for the Thursday interview this week. Hazel, before the news, I suppose we're speaking about the background, the family background, and just before the news you were touching on that sense of identity and how even, say, for third generation and some of your nieces or nephews or cousins who are third generation, that they still feel or they can different. Still easily be identified as different. Yeah, is that something you still actively feel?
You do. I think anyone who says they don't is well, fair play to them. But I do feel it, and it's hard not to feel it when people, when there's a small vocal minority that tells you that you are different every day. So
every day.
Oh, every day. Today was you are a spy from the CCP, and also no matter how much you try, you're never going to be Irish. And then yesterday was show us your birth cert if you really are Irish. Yeah, every day there's something. Every day is some kind of comment about whether I'm Irish or not. So
it's funny. I'm interested in this idea of being Irish. You were born here,
yeah,
and like you're clearly Irish. Like, at what point did your parents begin to feel Irish, or did they ever, or you know, that's a kind of a more kind of nebulous moment, I suppose, when people kind of their identity changes or their national identity.
I think the first time I thought, well, for me, I think my mum was very well integrated when she said the word. I probably shouldn't repeat it here, so I won't. But it begins with a B and ends in a KS. So yeah.
She said bollocks.
Oh, yeah, she said bollocks, and it was like, oh, how very Irish of you. So, but for her, I think, like, because I always thought, oh, when she got naturalized or something, she would have thought, oh, she was Irish. But no, I think the first time she really felt it was she said it was just something random that she was able to go to a place without asking for directions. And there was someone actually that when she was telling me that one day she was going shopping and someone stopped her and asked her a question about a place, and she was able to direct them, and that was the feeling of I'm home, I know this place. There's a certain kind of a familiarity to it, and I think that's when she felt like it. So like, for her, it's still very hard though, because like I think anyone who emigrates to any country for whatever circumstances, you never really want to leave home unless you have to. Yeah. So, and for her, she had to, so she left, and then there was like 1 foot in Ireland and 1 foot in Hong Kong, because her mum still lived in Hong Kong, and she still went back regularly to care for her mum when her mum wasn't well. So and my granny was so stubborn, she wouldn't move here, and no matter, like, all her family moved here in the end. Her other children moved here and started up lives here, and we had said to her, please move here after my granddad died, but she wouldn't, because for her, she was in her like late 70s, 80s at that stage, and she just went, no, this is my home, I'm living it out here, that's it, kind of way.
Which you have to respect that as well.
Yeah, I do too. But it was very hard then for her kids, like for the likes of my mum, my aunt, like it's that kind of, even though they felt Irish, they still felt like, well, Hong Kong was more home because that's where their family was. So, and for me, I guess I never had that peace because I was born here and my family's here and my friends are here, and you grow up being part and parcel of the fabric of society. So you know you belong here. But Mum, I think towards the perhaps second decade of when she lived here, first or second decade, she decided, yeah, you know what, this is home. I'm Irish, and like, yeah. So
you see, your parents and other exceptions aside, Ireland didn't really have a history of inward migration for a long time, and it probably fed into a kind of a simplistic view of national identity. You know, a kind of a blood and soil type view. You know, like as in born here and of Irish stock. That's what makes you Irish. And you get that, you're on the receiving end of the kind of the blunt end of kind of the legacy of that to a degree, and people have had to reevaluate what it means to be Irish, you know, and like at what point does someone who's here seeking asylum, do you consider them Irish, and children who are maybe born here or born abroad but don't have any memory of it, you know, who can still technically be deported along with parents, that type of thing, you know, that whether they are Irish or not. I wonder, like, do you have a definition or an idea in your own mind of what it means to be Irish?
No, that's the thing, because if I always thought, oh, if I'm able to put it in a box, then I'm able to explain it and tell people this is why people are Irish. And then it occurred to me, especially in the last year itself, just hearing the conversations and hearing people talk about whether people are Irish or not, or how people feel like they're Irish. You can't define it. Like, there's something about, everyone would claim, oh, of course you can define it. It's your nationality. It's what's on your birth cert. It's where you're born, etc. It's not. It's not even.
But if it's birth cert, you're more Irish than I am. But I'm born outside the country, so you're more Irish than I am.
Don't tell the trolls.
But don't tell people on Twitter that.
Yes, they'll come after you. But yeah, but this is the thing. I used to think, oh, if we can define it, it make things easier. But I think by defining it, it actually makes things harder for people, because not everyone fits under the same criteria.
So
and
you automatically exclude people as soon as you
define it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think we should. And I think it's the case of, if people feel the affinity to come to Ireland and they are seeking safety, they are seeking an asylum, they are seeking a better life for any reasons, then it is our duty as citizens to welcome them and to say, okay, can we make this your home? And I'm sure that will go down like a lead balloon to a lot of people, but like, a lot of people come at me and say, oh no, you don't have the sense of history and what we fought for. My parents lived in Hong Kong, where it didn't belong just to Hong Kong at the time. So, and if we look at history and shared history, there's a shared history among lots of people in the world of the same suffering, of the same fighting for freedom. But then, if we look at fighting for freedom, there's a proclamation of independence as on my office, and in the third or fourth paragraph, there is a line that says, "Cherish all children equally." So, if we are going to talk about freedoms and what we fought for and what our forefathers wanted for this country, they wanted equality, they wanted a certain sense of independence, but that applies to all children and not just children who look a certain way. So
yeah, everybody comes from somewhere else.
Yeah,
go back
exactly.
Far enough. You measure some of the abuse then online. Like, does that still, like, to what extent does that still bother you? To what extent do you are you able to dismiss it?
There are days when it gets a lot. It becomes kind of, I guess this word, like when it's gotten to different stages, like when they question my Irishness, when they question kind of whether I'm good for the country or not, you kind of brush it away and go, you know what, like I am who I am. If you don't want to accept it, that's fine. When they start to question my looks or my appearance, you go, oh, you know what, that's part of the job. When they start to question and point things about my child, that's a different thing altogether. So when there was a line about her being a mongrel, and there was a line about her should have been deported back to China to get aborted, that's where I draw the line. Like, I draw the line probably previously to that, but I have no problem with you coming after me, but when you come after my family, that is a different issue altogether. So, and even coming after me, I have spoken to the guards. The guards are very supportive, and we've reported things, and it's when it's online, it's one thing. When it comes in on the phone, it's another thing. When it comes in mail, it's another different
Does
thing.
one form feel more real than the other? You know, is it easier to dismiss the online because you can maybe imagine in your head it's a 13-year-old in a basement or something? I don't know, or like is it you know,
sometimes there was a very funny comment I saw yesterday after someone posted a picture of me, and again, they've moved tact slightly from questioning my nationality to appearance. And I've seen this recently a lot about the fact that I'm fat, eat too many biscuits, can't dress myself, blah, blah, blah. So one picture of me was, I think it was wearing a mask, and the line, the tweet was from, oh, this Chinese Lord Mayor is what represents our city. And then you have a whole plethora of people agreeing with said poster, and said poster is another member of the National Party that posted it. And there's all sorts of agreement that agreed with the poster about how we allow such a person to represent the city, why can't she dress herself, blah. But then there was a very funny post from a member of the National Party that posted to the original poster saying, this obsession with Hazel Chu from the National Party, from our National Party, I think he said, needs to stop. And it just kind of made me look at it going, oh, that's kind of, yeah, a bit of a full circle at this stage when your own members tell you to cop the hell on. So and it's that. I think I'm not waiting for that moment. I'm kind of of a stage that the pushbacks and the conversations we have about race and trolling and abuse do make people cop on to look at things and look at whether, like, if you come at my policy or my party's policy or what I do and work, I get that. I'm up for you to challenge it. But when you talk about things that really have no bearing, I get the feeling the more you push on that, people like that second poster would come back and say, you know what, what's this obsession about? Have we just lost the plot a bit, kind of way? So, which is a good thing. So, but yeah, does it get at me? Yeah, you know, there are days that I just go, whoa, like I need to step away from this completely. And then there are days I just go, you know, if you're going to post it, I'm going to drag you for it. So.
How do you step away? How do you relax? What are the tactics?
The recent one is a punch bag. So.
Oh yeah? Yeah, so. Whose face is on it?
Lots of people. I used to do kickboxing when I was younger. My parents, I think, after a couple of, my mum had one or two physical attacks, and because of her skin color, and she was worried about me, so she sent me to karate, and I did karate in Selbridge. And then when I moved out, I took up kickboxing myself. So did
you ever have to use it?
No. I had to think about that for a second, but not that I remember. There were a couple of scuffles at school, but no. And the thing with any type of martial arts, the learning isn't just for self-defense. It's a certain almost discipline measure. The thing with definitely karate and kempo was that there's a certain discipline that you shouldn't have to use it. So like they will be the first to tell you run before you have to strike someone. So I recently bought a punch bag online. It hasn't got delivered yet, so I'm hoping it will come soon. But that's my therapy. It's like going to be punching the hell out of something. So
all right.
Not good for your listeners to know. So, but yeah, I think any way you can, especially in such a tough year like this year, any way you can to exert some kind of I don't know, release method. It's always good. So.
If you're just joining me, if you're just tuning in, Hazel Chu is my guest this week for the Thursday interview on The Hard Shoulder. You mentioned a little bit about politics and your party and policy there. How did you go then from that girl at school who was doing the leaving cert, repeating it at age 16, to the Lord Mayor's office? What were the steps in between? What was the first step?
It was not a plan anyway, Kieran. Like everyone goes, did you ever plan to be Lord Mayor? I'm like going, no. So
I grew up dreaming of being Lord Mayor.
Yeah, I grew up dreaming.
Sound like Robbie Keane.
I grew up watching LA Law, thinking, I'll be one of those lawyers. My tiger.
Oh, that was it.
That was it. The bad American television. At one point, I kind of thought I could be Facer Murdoch from A-Team as well, but that didn't go down too well with my parents. So, but with my mum, I think, as with every immigrant, now I'm generalizing, but with specifically, shall we say, with mothers from a Chinese family, they are very tiger mum is what I call it. So they want their kids to succeed well, to do the best at everything. And I guess for my mum, what she wanted more than anything else was for me to do well. And she kind of saw jobs like doctors and lawyers, and she always thought, oh, those are good jobs. You should be one of those, because like she never had the chance. So I guess when she said to me, oh, what will you be? And I was watching these TV shows going, oh, what about the lawyer? She just goes, yeah, that's a good choice. So from school, it was like, okay, I'm going to go and be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer.
You could have been watching ER and this, you could have had a whole different career.
Well, yeah, you know? So I just didn't watch the right TV show. So, but yeah, it's funny though. I think it was also in school, I really, because of the certain comments and knowing I was different, I had this whole wanting to know, well, how do I help people who are different, and what is it that makes us equal? So I took an interest in that side of things. So when I was in college, the subjects I picked was politics and history. So because politics was definitely, especially there's a lecturer of mine, John Baker in UCD, who taught a great course on equality, and that really helped kind of move things along. And in a way, like it helped settle some of my own kind of thoughts as well, and I guess questions on what makes people equal and how does a society act equally. So and that was very helpful, actually. It was quite therapeutic. And then from there I applied for law school. I borrowed a hell of a lot of money for it, and I worked while I worked in Electric Picnic. So because I had a background in events in college anyway, I worked all the way through college in restaurants and events. So during law school, I was working for the pod for Electric Picnic, and I started off as a runner, just running around giving people stuff, and then I became one of their production managers, which isn't any more glamorous, because you're suddenly trying to find someone a dishwasher for their dishes in a field. That's from an act more than anything else, asking for their own dishwasher, or boiling eggs in a kettle. So so you have very glamorous jobs like that. And then I realized, oh, I'm finished law school, but I have 25 grand or so in debt from the inns. What will I do now? So I went straight back into work and tried to pay off my fees. My best friend passed away then, so I took some time off and I went traveling, and I came back and it was the depths of depression, which is accurate, but recession, so which is the more accurate word. And I found myself jobless and had to apply for a job, but took a while. It took me a long while to get a job, and when I did, I was then in New York. Then back here, I worked for a multinational, and then I started in politics.
Yeah.
So it's been a very weird route.
Yeah, a very weird route. At what point then, once after getting involved in politics, did you think, I don't want to be in the background anymore, I want to be in the front, I want my name on the ticket?
Probably when year 2, and it wasn't just kind of, oh, I know what, I'll go and do this now. It was funny enough after... So Patrick, my other half, who's now a TD, I ran his first campaign, and he had said to me from day dot that when we were running, he said, you know, this should be you. So like of the two of us, this should be you going forward for it. And I said, well, let's get you done and see how it goes. I think between the two of us, like for me, I was working with a multinational at the time. He was a child protection social worker that was tied in with the community. So even from a on-ground point of view, there was more of a reason for him to be there.
Yeah.
If we look at the role of what a public servant is, there was a more of a reason and more of a tie-in. So then when he got elected, I said, okay, there's a whole thing here that I seem to be very good at, which is the campaigning bit and organising. So I started helping with the party. And I think after I founded Monoglossa with Catherine and Grace and other members, it was there, having talked to Catherine Martin, that it occurred to me, hang on, I really should run, because her thing is, why the hell aren't you running? And I was like, well, yeah. So it wasn't like even a straight answer. It was, So like I at the time I was head of function in a gig in a big company. I was happy out insofar I had money to pay my mortgage. So I was there thinking, that step of removing myself into going into public limelight, public office, and also kind of giving up the stable job, is that worth it? And it took me a little while to think about it. And it was only when I talked to her, then talked to my mother, and my mother said to me, Hazel, if anything, I think it will be very helpful for like not just immigrants that are coming over, but it's good for if you have children in future to see someone that's different in a position that will be in public office. And also in terms of changes, let's be honest, like, and there was quite a compliment coming from my mother, who doesn't compliment me ever, or anyone, but she just said, you're also really good at this. You're really good at fixing stuff. And if a public servant is to do anything, it's to help fix things for their constituents or the people they represent. And she goes, and you're a fixer, so like go do that for the public. So. And
in 2025 then, what constituency are you running for the Dáil?
Wherever I'm living in at that stage, but there will be a Dáil run. So everyone's been asking me, but there will be. So, and yeah, hopefully it'll be for where I am now, but if I can't, then yeah, we'll see.
Before I let you go, Hazel, you're going to be back in News Talk next week, is
I am, on Christmas Eve actually, so I will be guest presenting Lunchtime Live. So.
Wow. You know, they let anyone present. If they let me present, it couldn't be that hard. Are you looking forward to it?
I am, but it's going to be good. It's like one of the things I've noticed with this year is the house isn't open, so we can't get people in, and I can't meet the public as much. So this is a great opportunity to just listen to people and talk to people. So yeah, I'm glad I'm doing it.
Well, listen, we wish you the best of luck with it, and happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas to you too.
Hazel Chu there, Lord Mayor of Dublin, my guest this week on the Thursday interview. Stay with us, we're going to be back in a moment.